So today we're going to talk about the book Manual of Free Energy in Devices and Systems by D.A. Kelly. It goes into electrostatics and free energy, something the Rockefellers can't put a meter on. But remember those weather vanes and lightning rods and orbs that used to be on top of the building made of copper and gold? Look at how big this is. These are absolutely massive. Well, if you filled those orbs with mercury and then there was a spin factor that took place, you create voltage. Herman Plausen talked all about this, atmospheric energy. There were patents to put balloons up into the air, gather the atmospheric energy. So if you use something like mercury, you amplify the energy that you got. Now check this. One big atmospheric antenna with an orb on top. And you start to think about technology like this, the lightning rod, weather vane. You know that whole thing? I think it's much more than catching lightning, that's for sure. But this is something to look into. Look into mercury, look into the old world. Look into the past, because you see a lot of stuff related to dynamos, Herman Plausen, and all these beautiful people who are understanding free energy.
Hi gang! I'd previously demonstrated generating power using atmospheric electricity. A hexacopter was used to lift one end of a wire high up into the air. Meanwhile, the other end of the wire was connected to a corona motor near the ground. Electricity then flowed through the wire and corona motor, making it turn. In this video, I'm going to explain how it works. Much of the following explanation is adapted from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman's lecture on physics, a section called Electricity in the Atmosphere. For every meter you go up in the air, the voltage increases by around 100 volts, or we could say around 100 volts per yard. We can draw these voltage increases using what are called equipotential lines. Notice that the ground is negative and the sky is positive with respect to each other. According to Feynman, this extends upward to 50 kilometers, or 31 miles. Where the air is very conductive. This is the case in fair weather. In stormy weather, like a thunderstorm, things are quite different, and I won't talk about that here. But if this voltage exists between your head and the ground, why don't you get a shock? The reason is that your body is a good enough electrical conductor that standing on the ground, you're basically a part of the ground. The equipotential lines would look like this. There's still effectively 0 volts between the top of your head and ground. Similar effects happen with trees, buildings, and so on. What about the electric current? A downward electrical current exists and consists of positive ions, molecules or clumps of matter that have a positive charge. These ions are moving slowly toward the ground. The current density from these ions is very small, around 10 microamps or 10 picoamps, crossing each square meter or yard every second. So in any small area, there's not a lot of power. And that's the explanation about atmospheric electricity adapted from Feynman's lectures. To take advantage of this atmospheric electricity, we electrically connect one end of a wire to the ground and lift the other end up into the air. In our case, we got good results at around 120 meters or 390 feet up. At 100 volts per meter or 100 volts per yard, that's 12,000 volts between that height and the ground. But just as with you standing on the ground, the wire is an electrical conductor, and so is also at ground potential. Looking at the equipotential lines around the wire, that voltage of 12,000 volts exists between some distance away from the wire and the wire. You can see that the equipotential lines are closest together at the top of the wire. This means the attraction is strongest there, and electrons make their way upward in the wire. Let's look more closely at the top of the wire. We'd put 6 sharp points using sewing pins at the top of that wire, but for ease of illustration I'll draw just one. Notice that because of the sharp shape at the point, the charges are crowded together at that point. Remember also that there are positively charged ions in the air. An electric field exists between the negative charges on the wire and the positive charges in the air. And we can represent that electric field by drawing lines between pairs of opposite charges. Notice that the electric field lines are closer together near the point, meaning the electric field is stronger there. It's strong enough to remove the negative electrons from the sharp point, where they neutralize positive ions. But due to the voltage, there are fresh positive ions moving downward and fresh negative charges coming up from the wire. We now have electricity flowing through the wire. The electric current in that electricity is very weak though. We didn't measure it, but from my experience with electrostatics, I'd estimate it in the low microamps, or more likely even lower. That's not enough to turn an electromagnetic motor, one like you use in everyday life, but it is enough to turn an electrostatic motor, like this corona motor. The corona motor consists of a plastic cylinder surrounded by sharp-edged metal blades. Every second one of those blades is connected to the wire going up into the sky. That means that when the wire starts conducting, those blades are now at whatever voltage the top of the wire is up in the sky, though opposite in polarity, positive. That's why you get a shock when you touch one of those wires. Negative charge is then pulled from the plastic cylinder through a gap between the edge of the blade and the cylinder. That leaves the cylinder with the same charge, and since like charges repel, a repulsion occurs that rotates the cylinder. The next blade is connected to earth ground and becomes negatively charged, and since opposite charges attract, it attracts the charged area of the cylinder. It then neutralizes that charged area by taking electrons from the ground. And that's how atmospheric electricity can power an electrostatic motor like a Corona motor.
This new Atmo motor generates a lot of torque at the shaft. If I squeeze to try to stop it, it just starts to burn my hand. It gets really, really hot in the shaft. So we're going to connect a drill bit on here and see if we can drill through some plastic or wood with this setup. So I've connected a 1/4 inch drill bit to the output shaft in the Atmo motor here. So we'll power this up and see what this can do. Okay, I'm going to turn on the high voltage DC generator. Fixed before I can do that. But another thing I've been wanting to test is some of this conductive thread. Now this is not very conductive. I already tested this with just low voltage DC, and in just a couple feet it becomes almost unusable because it's not a very good conductor. So what I've done for this test is run this thread up here, way up there, hundreds of feet, to that bamboo pole, at the top of that pole. And then the thread goes down to my high voltage generator. So it's going to be providing high voltage DC, 20 to 30,000 volts. It's going to travel right down this conductive thread, even though it's not a very good conductor, and it should power up the motor, and we should be able to generate electricity down here on this end. So let's test it out. Look at that, spinning right up with the high voltage DC coming down this thread. And it's definitely working. It's already starting to light the lights.
Churches, and that some of these old world buildings were designed to take in energy from the atmosphere. Where's the proof? Well, there are books on this subject. It's called Atmospheric Electricity. And yes, they were investigating how to harness this energy far before that story that they tell us in school of Benjamin Franklin discovering the electrical nature of lightning. Like, they really played us for a joke. He flew a kite with a key on it. Guys, this is Freemasonic symbolism. Benjamin Franklin was literally at the highest rank of masonry, and you can even see the compass integrated with this famous painting. These old world buildings had technologies that were capable of extracting electricity from the atmosphere. You can even see these at the top of steeples. This is typically seen to be just a compass, but they're more than just that. There are videos of old temples with this technology still active. These electrical charging centers were then converted into physical worship centers. Now that
Alright, so we have red lead going into the ground, black lead hooked up to the magnet wire that's hooked up to our balloon, which is right now probably about 20 feet in the air. Right now we're at AC volts of 1.5. It's about a AA battery. And that's, if you look at it now, it's dropping because it is coming down. The higher we go, let's go back up. The higher we go, the more it climbs. Pulling it back down. Lower it goes, pulling it all the way down. Now I'm going to, so now we're like about 10 feet up. Now I'm going to let it go again. Higher it goes, the more voltage we get. 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Let's stand this bad boy up and see. Go a little bit higher. There we go. So right now we're about 25 feet up. Almost 2 volts of AC. Alternating current. So the higher you go up, the more voltage you have. And now we'll lower it back down. Going back down. Set it back on the ground. And watch the numbers as I pull it down. It's coming all the way down. Getting lower. We're about 10 feet off the ground now. Now right here. 0.3. About 5 feet away. Now and it's in my hand. So now it's.
It is hard to completely verify, but still very well documented. Nikola Tesla converted the engine of a Pierce Arrow car with his nephew in 1931 in Buffalo, New York, in the United States. They apparently removed the gasoline engine and replaced it with a brushless AC electric motor. The motor was powered by a cosmic energy power receiver, harnessing the energy from the atmosphere and creating an atmospheric-based car running on free energy. Although this is not electroculture, it would certainly prove that it's possible to harness this atmospheric energy in many ways.
Oh, they have found many ancient technologies at these sites, because these buildings are the ancient technologies themselves. They, of course, will never let you and I know these technologies. And that is, of course, part of the control that they have over us all. The elites of this world know all about this free energy technology and could make it available to the masses in an instant, just as our ancient past did. Yet, sadly, that's not the world we live in. We are intentionally held back, technologically and others. Our true history and its advanced capabilities are deliberately hidden from us as well. But just look at the architecture and the designs that went into these structures of our past. The technology is still very much there, and it's been hidden in plain sight from us. We are but the inheritors, living in a post-apocalyptic realm, not knowing the greatness of the past that's been hidden all around. Research the mud flood and fall of Tartaria. Question everything, friends.
Imagine a machine that could power your house for free. Well, that's exactly what 2 Australian inventors claim they've developed. Using magnets and a battery, their new generator has been described as revolutionary.
John, this is the machine?
Yes, this is it, Chris.
What's it capable of?
It'll power a house.
It sounds too good to be true, but inventor John Christie is convinced his machine will change the world.
So, John, basically you're saying this machine can produce 5 times as much power as it consumes?
Yes, it does. And in fact, it can produce more than that.
Once kick-started from a battery, John and his partner Lou Britz say this prototype will run for years without stopping, generating 24 kilowatts of power a day.
You don't get more revolutionary, I think. I mean, we're talking about something that has the capacity to change the way that the world produces its electric power. It has a capacity to change the way that cars are propelled. You can replace the combustion engine, in fact.
John, these are big claims. Are you sure you can live up to them?
We don't really need to live up to them, Chris. The technology speaks for itself.
A householder could buy one of these machines and install it in his garage and power his house forever without buying another kilowatt from a retailer. I mean, that's how serious it is.
Steve Brassington is an independent electrical engineer. He's seen the machine and backs up everything John says.
It's revolutionary. That's the only way to describe it. I think the technology, it's not bending physics, it's just using principles commonly in use in power generation today in a different way. These guys have thought outside of the square.
Tesla coils, if you guys can see all that. And this is doing, if you want to see, wireless power right here. Wireless. Why is it wireless? Because what's happening is you have your Tesla coil right here. You have it connected to a source, such as running water. You have that other part connected to a ground, such as beautiful Mother Earth. And then you have an aerial antenna, or an atmospheric antenna, capturing the atmospheric energy. And if you get into all the atmospheric energy patents, what they used to do was they would send out a metallic balloon that was filled with helium, and they would send it up into the air, and the higher up that atmospheric balloon would go into the air, it would capture all the beautiful energy, and they would connect, for example, a piece of copper from those balloons and connect it down into a grid system, and they could get free energy. Now, what's interesting is they talk about atmospheric energy for about maybe an hour or two in the 3rd grade. They'll hit on atmospheric energy and talk about it for about an hour, and when you're in 3rd grade, and then they will never talk about it again. Reason being, because atmospheric energy is being captured by, as my buddy just said, old world tech. Yes, all those beautiful antennas and rods and all different types of spires and those points, those are all capturing the free energy. And so if you look at Tesla's patent, which is interesting because I'll have you guys, you can look this one up, 645-576, 1900 wireless patent. But what's interesting is, as this guy was saying in the book, the antenna is missing from the picture. You see an antenna from this Tesla coil, but you don't see what the antenna looks like. So the question is what did the antennas used to look like?
Man, it's time to discuss these old world ancient buildings that are very questionable with some of their designs. Below me you can see some electricity. No, it's not the electricity coming from this one. Not in this year anyway. There's frequency patterns to everything too, by the way, like these little grid patterns in the ocean. How is that even what? Cathedrals, for example. A cathode is a type of electrode through which electrons move. Electrons are a semiconductor, usually a metal that is connected to something that is not metal. See, the cathode delivers electrons, negative charge, and the anode collects them, positive charge. I'd recommend checking out one of these books like this right here, The Earth and Atmospheric Electricity. That's a... I mean, there's pictures, man, in these books from like the 1600s just showing bright electricity blasting off into the sky. Then you ever notice, like in the windows of these cathedrals, guess what else they match up to? Like, exactly match up to. Somatic sound frequencies, man. Look how similar these are. Seriously, like, take a good look at this. And you just got to think about these things, man. They're not just there for no reason. You know what I mean?
One of the earliest electrostatic motors was the Benjamin Franklin wheel, and it was basically a bunch of thimbles on a wheel. And it worked because electric charges are just like magnets. Like charges will repel, and unlike charges will attract. And if you have a high voltage negative and a high voltage positive, they'll attract each other. And all electrostatic motors work in this way. So, where to get that high voltage? Well, one way is with the high voltage supply, obviously. Plug it in and you'll generate yourself a high voltage supply. Another way is to pull it from the air. The Earth is basically a big old ball of electrons, and bombarded with cosmic rays, the atmosphere is full of positively charged ions that basically drift towards the Earth. And that creates a situation where the Earth is considered to be zero, and every meter up or so, you get a 100-volt difference. So 1 meter is 100, 2 meters is 200, and this extends to the upper atmosphere, about 31 miles or 50 kilometers or so. So that voltage difference is huge. Unfortunately, the amps isn't very big. It's about 10 picoamps per square meter or something like that.
You can pull energy from the air.
We live on a giant spark gap between the positive charge of the atmosphere and the negative charge of the Earth. And some people say
you can grow bigger fruit by charging your soil. And I love a bit of geometry. So I thought I'd set up an experiment. I've made a few different types of antenna, which has been quite fun. So I've wired up this whole bed at 4 corners, 1, 2, 3 and 4, with 4 of these that lead down to 4 insulated strips of cable that link all 4 corners. So one of those comes here, under the soil, all the way along here, all the way under there, up to somewhere around here. There we are. That's also connected to this bad boy. I've also made myself a grounding throne, because why not? Grab this, one hand in each, sit there, feet on the ground, ba-boom. This strawberry bed has got some loganberries and tayberries as well. Has 3 of these. And that, I'm going to test it so I can get my own science. I've got somewhere to work from and see if it actually bears fruit. And some of it's not looking bad so far.
What history will never tell you is that we have had, and still have, free energy. These are the remnants of our hidden technological past. We can see that previous civilizations were far more advanced than we could imagine, and even beyond what we have been told. This knowledge is hidden because they want to conceal the era of yokes, the Golden Age. All the temples and buildings of the ancient world were built with a purpose. No element from antiquity was merely random decoration. Everything had a specific function. They harnessed kinetic energy and converted it into electricity. They also tapped into the ether flowing above us, the essence of existence itself. The very existence and extended construction of these structures are beyond our current understanding with flawless geometric symmetry. Do they really expect us to believe that these were built with just hammers and chisels? It's time to realize that the historical narratives we've been told weren't crafted for us. They were made for them. Almost everything we've been taught about the past is a lie, and the buildings and structures that still stand today are living proof of it.
A year and a half ago today, I found a patent that I believe will change the future forever. It's all a matter of constructing it now. This is called the electric pyramid generator. And this patent has 14 references directly related to Walter Russell's research and Nikola Tesla's research with radiant energy. The Wardenclyffe Tower and the radiant energy harvester patent that he established patents for at the USPTO. This right here is direct proof that radiant energy can be harvested in enormous amounts of quantities and converted into enormous amounts of power. Now remember, power is technically 2 forms of force reacting with each other. With that being said, the electric pyramid generator is what I would call the new and improved version of the Wardenclyffe Tower. And the reason why I say that is because they were able to use an oscilloscope to pick up a certain frequency that could send more power into the secondary coil of a Tesla coil circuit, which is being used in this patent here. When Tesla built the Tesla coil, I believe that is what led him to creating the Wardenclyffe Tower and the radiant energy collector. This right here is a final product result of what happens after you figure out which frequency, or one of the frequencies, is what would be known as a cosmic frequency. This cosmic frequency is what I would call a tuning signal, which enables you to resonantly communicate with the sun and extract energy from it if you create a circuit to do so. By constructing a Tesla coil circuit tuned at an 83 kilohertz frequency, you can resonantly communicate with the sun by using a pyramid-shaped antenna to collect what is known as telluric currents. The telluric currents are captured by an effect in the copper pyramid that you see right here. And it's creating what is known as a quasi-capacitive effect, which means there is a vacuum of electrons going right down this pyramid, coming out of the higher atmosphere, and it's electrostatically supercharging the system. And all the electrons are being infinitely produced by the sun as a result. Right here is the complete circuit. The pyramid has to be placed roughly 80 meters into the sky. It gets even better than this. I have a little simulated version that all of you can try for yourselves if you ever decide to build an off-grid energy harvester. Now this right here is an electrostatic motor. This is one of my first designs. I have another one currently printing as we speak, and you are going to love it. It's going to have, hopefully, much more torque output because of the surface area that I mathematically selected for the electrode plates. How this operates is using a principle known as dielectric repulsion. So basically, this thing is a high voltage DC motor. It will take high voltage DC, low current, and convert it into mechanical power output. These motors operate under electric principles over magnetic principles, meaning electric lines form in straight patterns while magnetic lines form in circular patterns. So what I am doing here is maximizing the electric force to a certain degree. I don't have enough surface area on my plates to create enough torque like what I am looking for, so the next design should be able to solve that problem for me. What I'm going to show you here today is just a slight power efficiency output that I get from this motor. Now it's not going to have any kind of torque really because it doesn't have enough surface area to create the torque that I'm looking for. So it will rotate on just a half a watt of power, and it will rotate a little bit faster to just about 3 watts before it starts arcing out. But I want to show you just how it functions so you guys have a good visual perspective on electrostatic motors and how they operate. We'll also let you get a closer view of how it looks right here. This right here is aluminum tape. That's all it is. You can form a capacitive value using aluminum tape, and the more surface area you have available, the more capacitance and voltage you can store and release at one given time using this motor design. Now remember, this operates on capacitive principles, not inductance principles. Alright, so I have my leads connected from my high voltage transformers to the high voltage electrostatic motor. I'm going to show you what the motor does when I put 3 watts of power into it. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not registering the whole input. Let me get up to 3 watts. This is at 2 watts right here. And this is what happens when I turn up the current. So we're going to turn up the watt or the current because the volts will burn out my high voltage transformers. That's at about 3 watts. Let's turn it up to So that's at 3 watts input. And as you can tell, it does have some significant RPM output as a result. I have a much cooler model that I am printing out right now that should produce a much better mechanical power output as a result as well. I'll show you real quick. Check this out. Once I have this motor design producing the power output that I am looking for, then I will be able to take things to the next level with wireless power transmission as well. If I use the electric pyramid generator circuit in combination with these motors, I will be able to wirelessly power them over a distance and generate tons of mechanical power output by hooking them up to 3-phase generators and tuning them to a 60 hertz frequency output. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see the next part to what I am doing with the electric pyramid generator and the electrostatic motor, be sure to hit that like button and share button, and let me know what you think about this idea in the comments below. I'm a firm believer it's going to work. It's just a matter of fine-tuning the energy conversion now. So thank you again for all of you that have been showing support towards this channel. I would not have been able to build and acquire these materials without all of you, especially my subscribers as well. Big shout out to all of you. You guys are awesome for that. So, also, one last thing. For my subscribers only, the newer motor, the upgraded V3 electrostatic motor, is going to be posted in the subscribers group after I have done some trial and error testing on it to make sure that it is actually worth your time building for yourselves. Feel free to do some research on this patent for yourself. Have a good one. Peace. Alright, so I know you've been wanting to see a perpetual motion device. I am about to post part 5, but there is one last thing I gotta show you, and this has to do with nuclear fusion and magnetic perpetual motion. There's a guy by the name of David LaPointe who created perpetual motion using a magnetic array. That is what I believe is the key to over unity, is a specific array of magnets. Check this out. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
The old books like Genesis, for instance, if we look at Genesis from a vibratory standpoint, it becomes like a tech manual. It says how the etheric, the infinite energy levels, the void, remember how we talked about all the energy was in the void, there was God, that was everything, is held latent in that void. And how that became demodulated lower and lower and lower frequencies by stages, as it would be in music, to become male and female forces, and then the neutral force, which would be God in the center of Adam and Eve. It's kind of neat when you start looking at some of this ancient literature from these fundamental universal principles. Those guys knew what they were talking about. But if you transport yourself back 2,000 years ago, there was no English word for vibration. There was no English word for electricity or any of these things. So they had to convey it to us in allegorical form or metaphors or whatever, to get the essence or the insight to what they were trying to tell us. The Masons had it, and the Rosicrucians had it, and the Indian Vedas and all those people had all this stuff, and all we're doing is rediscovering something that's been there all this time.
Yeah, I was reading some Keeley material, and it mentioned an interesting experiment where you take a sound vibration of around 40,000 cycles per second, which you could generate, say, by a piezo ceramic disc, and put it in or near a cup of water. It'll start to vibrate, and if you increase the power enough, it'll turn into pure energy. Could you explain something about that?
Sure, yeah. In some of this literature that we have, it's reported that John Keeley, like in this particular motor, you could take water and vibrate it at a given frequency, and it would disassociate the water. Well, that's kind of neat. In one of the articles, it mentions that he found that the frequency of 42,800 cycles per second would be sufficient to disassociate water. Disassociate means break water into water vapor. So you break the large molecule of water
into smaller molecules of water vapor. And in my effort to figure out exactly what was going on, and this was back in the beginning, I don't think you used a pure mechanical vibration. You're talking about piezoelectric. Yeah, that works. If you can go down to Walmart or Kmart and you can buy an ultrasonic humidifier. Here is sound in the high frequency ranges breaking water into water vapor. And you can buy it off the shelf today. 100 years ago, there was no knowledge of ultrasonics. Ultrasonics didn't become a subject until the 30s, 1930s, 50 years after Keeley did his work. In my own effort, I have not been able to convince myself that 42,800 is a significant frequency, except maybe if we could take water and pulsate it, as this motor does. Just take the whole volume of water and start to do this to it, 42,800 times a second. I think we would see a dramatic disassociation of that water. If you could pull a vacuum on it that fast and compress it that quickly, this thing would actually explode.
You are correct, the elites are still harvesting that free energy today, charging us a premium for what we can get for free. This video gives you a bit of detail on their practices.
There is quite a lot of pushback from people who don't want huge windmills built close to their houses, and quite rightly so. They are noisy, ugly, they kill birds by the thousands, and not very effective on days with no wind. And when it's too windy, they have to turn them off so they don't rip themselves apart. Another lesser-known fact is that the so-called carbon footprint to make these huge machines is massive, and it's even bigger when they are decommissioned. They last on average about 20 years. They can't burn them because it's too toxic, so they have now resorted to burying them in landfills because it costs too much to break them down. That's not very green, is it? According to our favourite source of information, the UK's first grid tower was erected in 1928. Its purpose was to transport electricity to the outer reaches of the mainland, supplying its ever-growing population with the power it needed for expansion into the Industrial Revolution. Before the expansion of the national grid, businesses used local coal or gas-fired generators and all manner of contraptions to power their factories, so the emergence of electricity delivered to your doorstep, so to speak, was hugely popular. We have been led to believe that these high-tension power lines transport electricity from one place to another. This is true, but the thousands of miles of cable have another lesser-known purpose, and that purpose could change the way you think about power generation. And it also begs the question, why the hell are they keeping this information from us?